Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
Am I surprised that Donald Trump has been reelected president of the United States? No, I'm not. And some of you have heard my predictions. Some of you have heard my analysis over the last 6 weeks or so, maybe even a little bit more. And I've heard from some people who said, man, I can't believe that you're predicting, or the words I used were, it's Donald Trump's race to lose. And I've based this on feeling, which is extremely dangerous, right? And almost irresponsible, especially when you're talking about in a broadcast setting. Feelings shouldn't be accounted for. We should be looking at hard data. And when you look at the hard data and you look at some of the trends and you consider that sort of absent voice in most of the polling, I think even the data pointed to what we saw today, or what we saw earlier this morning once Wisconsin was called. And that is, quite frankly, that there is a huge swath of this country that bought into the messaging that the Trump campaign put forth, number one. Number two, did not buy into the messaging, the branding, the packaging that the Harris campaign put forth. And number three, that we have seen a major shift in information distribution. And it's not just as simple as, oh, well, everybody listens to Joe Rogan, nobody watches MSNBC or anything like that. Social media, podcasting, talk radio, so on and so forth. That's a huge factor, no doubt about it. But so too is the town square. So too is almost the oldest form of communication. People talking on the ground, people sharing their lived experiences. And at the end of the day, whether you love it, whether you hate it, that is what moved people this election cycle. The shared experiences, some of which you can attribute to politics, some of which you can't attribute to any political party. But at the end of the day, that's what moved the needle. And Democrats did not do even close to a good enough job of recognizing that and reacting to it. Now, there's no doubt about it. We've been talking about it here on the podcast. We've been talking about it on the radio, that since the elevation of Vice President Harris into the position of Democratic nominee, there's been, it's almost like when maybe you have some friends who are in bands, or all of a sudden they've got a TikTok shop or an Instagram store. Maybe they're in real estate, whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, they're like a viral sensation, right? Of course, you can pay for this. If you've got the budget, you can boost your numbers on pretty much every social media platform to an extent where you have to take a look at engagement. Are people commenting? Are people getting involved? What sort of continuation of your messaging is authentic, right? That's really the litmus test for authenticity versus paid social media. And you probably know people like that. I know a lot of our listeners on the podcast side, you know, we've got sort of an orientation towards the digital, right? Which is great because, frankly, it's not as if digital has replaced traditional media. Don't let anybody tell you that, because that's foolish. But they work in tandem in a way that in some cases, the digital reach, when authentic, is the most powerful connection between a messenger and the recipient of that message. And when it's not authentic, it is also powerful, but in the opposite direction that it was intended. You got the sense from the phenomenon with the Chapel Roan and the attempt to create a social media phenomenon out of the Harris campaign, overnight sensation, with excellent graphic designers, TikTok teams, the whole thing. But you got the sense, and there's no way that if you're a discerning consumer of content, you felt like everything that was coming at you was authentic. Now, obviously, Donald Trump, here's a guy who has literally lied, exaggerated, and obfuscated facts on a regular basis to build his brand and his coalition. But the consumer felt like, for whatever reason, and these are the biorhythms, these are those dangerous feelings that are difficult, if not impossible, to articulate or boil down to data points. For whatever reason, that message was received as more authentic, and the engagement, manipulated as it likely, in fact, definitely was on X and other platforms, it resonated in a more authentic way. And in a moment where you've got xenophobia off the charts, okay, in tandem with the fact that, yes, the stock market is doing well. Yes, when you take a look at the inflation and the reduction thereof, and when you take a look at other metrics from an economic standpoint, from an IPE, an international political economy standpoint, all the metrics will show you that, in fact, on paper, in an academic economic context, the U.S. is actually doing pretty well. But guess what? Most people don't feel that at all. Most people are struggling at some level, be it with housing, be it with food, definitely with healthcare. And instead of offering practical on-the-ground solutions, at least in a way that resonated, the entire message, the dominant message, if nothing else, from Democrats this year on the national stage was, hey, we're not Donald Trump. But it was not even close to oriented toward solutions in a way that the random person felt was authentic. Now, that town square piece, you got to get out and talk to people. I mean, we're here in Rhode Island. You know, I spend almost all my time in the Northeast, right? So when you're in New York City, or when you're in New Haven, or when you're in Rhode Island, or whatever the case may be, you're going to get a completely different flavor. But you can't even necessarily sleep on that. Take a look. The Trump performance in Rhode Island is the best performance by a Republican since George H.W. Bush. And I hear it every single day on the radio. I hear it every single day in the community. Not necessarily my community, not necessarily the artistic community, not necessarily the Providence community, but the community writ large. It's not as simple as there's an inundation of MAGA people. That's a part of it. It's bigger than that. At the town square level, people feel, and the results speak for themselves when you take a look at this country and you take a look at not only the Trump victory, but you take a look at Capitol Hill. The results speak for themselves, that people don't believe they are positioned from a bread and butter standpoint in a way that is appropriate, effective, and can get them moving forward in their own lives. What took place yesterday and over the course of early voting is a repudiation of the notion that everything's just fine. Now, there's a lagging nature to economic statistics. So as recession oriented or recession pushing back against the likelihood of recession that we were all seeing, as the inflation aspect is pushed back against, as those numbers start to trickle down, as you take a look at market performances, as you take a look at all the things here in Rhode Island, for example, with the housing packages and efforts there to try to expand housing. When you take a look at all of that, that is a lagging statistic. That is not even close to impacting people's lives at this point in time. And that's what I've been seeing. That's what I've been hearing. Couple that with what seems to be a lack of authenticity across social media, a dismissal or goofy presentation on a podcast level. And again, I listen to the Rogan Trump podcast, and it is filled with, again, exaggerations, lies, inconsistencies, but it did not matter to the random person out there who said, hey, for whatever reason, I think this guy and this cohort are going to be able to position me better from an economic standpoint. At the end of the day, that's what drove this. Now, also, the lies, exaggerations, and nonsense around this xenophobic approach that admittedly, and I've said it over and over again for over a year, anybody who's listened to the radio show, anybody who's listened to anything that I've said, the Biden administration, did they handle the border wall situation, if you want to call it that, in an effective way? No, they did not. You want to call it a gaffe, you want to call it a misstep. Now, you want to go through and compare it to previous administrations and take a look at the hard data. You'll see the reality is that it's an exaggerated. I've got people that honestly think that there are 12 million prisoners a year being released into the United States from South American countries. I mean, there are people who actually believe that here in Rhode Island. And that's because of a very effective propaganda campaign and misinformation campaign that has drilled into people's heads that they're not safe because somehow, some way, somebody's going to sneak into the country and come and get them. And they've done a phenomenal job of drilling this into enough people's heads. That is and by the way, and tying that, foolish as it is, statistically and data-driven wise, nonsensical as it is, they have tied this into that economic conversation. No doubt about it. And they have been very effective in communicating this in a way that seems authentic across those digital platforms. Everybody says, why doesn't Trump do 60 Minutes? You know, why doesn't Trump do this? Why doesn't Trump do that? Because they didn't have to. Elon Musk and X, they've got a controlled environment there. Anybody who's been on Twitter/X and has seen the shift there knows what's happening. You take a look at the podcast space, take a look at the top podcasts in this country, and take a look at the top radio shows in this country, and you tell me you're surprised about any of the information that's been pushed out there and the way that it's connected time and time and time again with people, the lies, the exaggerations, the utter nonsense. It was effective. And meanwhile, admittedly, with a late start, a very late start, a clunky situation for the vice president to enter into in a not unprecedented but bizarre and unusual manner, getting into this race, and an inability to find footing in a way that seemed authentic. The social media performance, when you scroll through TikTok, was obviously a paid marketing campaign. It was not user-generated the way that somehow, some way, the Trump world was able to find a pathway to. So that's where we're at. And now you've got a cohort of people entering into the White House that are in tandem with a controlled Capitol Hill, a media that doesn't know what to do. When I say media, I'm talking traditional media, of which, yes, am I a part of? Yes, I live in both worlds. And it is a dramatically different experience between each of the two worlds. The independent, you want to call it the alternative, you want to call it the contemporary, you want to call it the new media, and sort of legacy traditional media. And they work in tandem. You can't get this idea that, well, you don't need CBS or MSNBC because you got Joe Rogan, is utter nonsense. At the same time, the dismissal of the independent, alternative, new media by aspects of the traditional legacy media trued out in a way that was horrible for the Democrats. And I think for this country. And I would guess that there are a lot of people who would agree with that. And now you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you've got that Dana White from the mixed martial arts. I mean, you got Joe Rogan, Tony Hinchcliffe, Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, you've got this Elon Musk. That's your coalition. That's your cohort. Donald Trump Jr. and, of course, J.D. Vance, who now positions himself in a way where, I don't know, in a couple of years, you're going to start to see him begin his fundraising exercising as he likely positions himself to run for president in 4 years. And maybe continues this thing in a Reagan, George H.W. Bush manner, where you've got now a 12-year span. And you've got all these issues on the table, which have either fallen through the cracks or are in danger of falling through the cracks. Women's health. How about just common good and decency? Healthcare. Higher ed. Public education. Transit. The unhoused. Culture war nonsense. The incursion of Christian nationalism. They talk about it like there's somehow this, that the America First agenda is, and people have been duped into believing that the America First agenda is somehow, we're not going to get entangled in anything on a foreign level, which is complete and utter nonsense. We're talking about the militarization of outer space at the same time as you've got genocide happening in multiple theaters. You've got a world power shift right now, leans not only right, not only populist, but towards authoritarianism. You've got a divide and conquer mentality, and they walked right in. They walked right through the door. The door was wide open. Nobody should be surprised about what took place in this election because the door was wide open. Now, leftists who are correct on most issues of an economic and a world structure level, based on don't give me the stock market and this, that, and the other. What do you want? Feudalism at this point? You're heading towards a further narrowing of the wealth gap. A widening of the wealth gap and a narrowing of an upper class. So the very same people who the message reached through what was perceived or was in fact authentic articulation of strategies to improve the economic and general well-being of the average everyday American now find themselves facing a reality that's only by design going to make it worse for them. Unless you are positioned so well across the S&P and across the Dow and with real estate holdings, and maybe you are, and congratulations, because your position just radically expanded. The door was wide open. The Harris campaign was a total flop. It felt inauthentic. It didn't connect on the town square level in a meaningful way, period. Does that mean she's got low IQ? No. Absolutely. That's not it at all. Could she have been an effective candidate? And how about Joe Biden? Here's a guy, Joe Biden, you want to give him a pass because you feel bad for him. Here's a guy who told you he was a transitional president back in 2020, decides to run, even though, I'm not a physician. I've never met Joe Biden. No real idea other than what you see on television or hear on the radio or see on digital. I don't know. But boy, it doesn't seem like this is a guy who should have been running for a second term, does it? So instead of going through a proper opportunity for, Bernie Sanders to get in this thing, or Pete Buttigieg to make a challenge, or for a full primary level debate within the party on what issues actually matter, instead of figuring out a messaging platform that could deliver a victory. You just make a decision. If you're Biden, you're going to jump back into this thing. You're going to you're going to go for the second term. And you set us up at the same time that the Republicans, and it's not even Republicans, at the same time as the cohort of Trump world, doesn't matter. January 6th doesn't matter. Civil penalties and convictions doesn't matter. Racially charged commentary doesn't matter. Anti-women commentary doesn't matter. Crude remarks doesn't matter. Because the door was wide open. So now what? You lick your wounds if you're Democrats. You lick your wounds if you're leftists, although leftists, it's almost a different conversation. The Democratic Party, which we all know is one branch of the business party in tandem with the Republicans. But from a cultural standpoint, the Republican Party has leaned into the culture war aspect of things in a way that has produced some form of kinetic energy. While Democrats have done everything they can to resist it. Soft on climate change, soft on international affairs, hawkish policies. No real tangible presentation about how the average everyday person, you got people 40 years old living with roommates. You got people who can't buy a house, no health care. You got 71 degrees on November 6th in the Northeast. You got the equatorial area, wildfires, and it's dry as a bone. You got all kinds of options in front of you. Just pick a storyline and run with it. Instead of the we got to save democracy nonsense, which, by the way, may very well be true, but never resonated in an authentic way outside of the echo chamber, which I get it. I'm in that echo chamber. I try to step outside of it as often as I can. They were awful. And everybody's going to find a way to try to convince themselves that this thing isn't as bad as it is. It's bad, man. This is awful. You're going to be looking at Robert F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy Jr. I mean, sir, you're going to be looking at this guy. You got Kennedy money. You got whatever Trump's money is. You got Elon Musk. This is a cohort of uber wealthy white men disconnected from your lives. And yet this country said they better represent our wants and needs. Are you joking? That is exactly what transpired. It's a joke. So now what do? You realize what's at stake, and you do what I did in 2016, I think, and you look local. The same level that actually built Trumpism, the town square level, is the same space that can protect you and your community against it. The town square level. I'm not talking state. I'm not talking municipal. Don't worry about the mayor. Don't worry about this zoning board. I'm talking about your neighborhood. I'm talking about yourself, your own body, your own temple. What level of mental and physical preparation can you do as an individual for this moment? If your health care is taken away, what can you do to be as preventative in terms of your own physical well-being? These are questions we have to be asking ourselves. There's never been a moment where mutual aid organizations have been as important at the local level. contribute to them. Get involved. Yes, this election was won by the Trump machine in large part because of a dominant position on social media and digital media. But it was also won because of what was happening on the ground. So change what's happening on the ground. We can do that. That's not fairy tale, femininomenon stuff. That's your everyday life. Kindness, etc., seems trite. It seems nonsensical, but it's what we need to practice. And we need to find a way on a grassroots level to be there, go back to the foundations of society, simultaneously elevate to a higher level of consciousness as a species. Now, these are broad, esoteric goals. They're a lot harder than getting legislation passed, for example, but they're attainable on an individual basis. Doing that in tandem with municipalities, in tandem with maybe you've got a county or some sort of regional structure to your government. And at the state level, again, here in Rhode Island, Trump, 42.2% of Rhode Islanders cast their ballot for Donald Trump.
Bartholomew Town.
Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest, critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in the theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram at newportfilm. Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. And you're going to have to live side by side, face to face with these people. They may be in your family. They may be people that are connected to the most important aspects of your life. And they are the key to reversing, or it may be possible to prevent some of the damage that can occur to aspects of our society as a result of this. There has never been a time where local action, both governmental and exo-governmental, has been more important than right now. Now, I'm not saying you got to go sit there and watch every town council meeting or whatever that takes place, or every zoning board meeting. But understand what's happening in your community. Understand what's happening inside of you, inside of your immediate world, your friends and family, your community, that which binds us together on an esoteric level. We need to raise our level of consciousness. Maybe you have a religious bone in your, maybe you are religious, I'll say, or maybe you're somewhat religious. Maybe you're atheist. Maybe you feel something has to be resonating on a physics level, a metaphysical level that explains something somewhere. You know, I've often talked about this notion that for everything we can understand, there must be equally as many things that we can't understand. Our brains can't process. And maybe that's where all this stuff that seems esoteric and nonsensical and silly, maybe that's where that lives. And we might want to start to see that shift a little bit, where we can understand a little bit of that unknown, that terra incognito internally. It matters what your state looks like now. It matters what your town looks like in a way that maybe it hasn't before. And it matters that people who dismissed, just like in 2016, that dismissed their fellow humans' wants and needs, the Democratic Party did not connect. Democrats also have to look at themselves and say, what are we? Are we the party of the worker and the union? Are we the party of peace? Are we going to get out of the military-industrial complex slaughter business? Are we going to get out of the big banks? Who the hell are we? Right now, it's Republican light. And as you take a look, and the propaganda machine will continue on. It will only get stronger and will only get worse. They're going to tell you, well, it's in the name of not censoring free speech. Fine. Let's see how it plays out. But is the playing field even, where you got a situation where an opposition voice as or a dissident voice has the same playing field, same level of access, the same platform as a now statist voice? We will see. I can't tell you enough how unsurprised I was. Disappointed, absolutely. No question. Not surprised. And Democrats got to look at themselves and say, hey, whole new thing. The alignment with the technocratic, military-industrial, and frankly, elitist mentality is outrageous and needs to go away. You will not win in the trenches with an elitist mentality. It's not because of Ivy League schools or anything like that. J.D. Vance and all. It's not because of that. It's not because of Silicon Valley played a big role in this. Peter Thiel He put J.D. Vance in control of this thing. Elon Musk, whatever relationship specifically with Silicon Valley, that is all in there. It's baked into what happened. It is not as simple as saying, well, the coastal elites don't get us. No, the coastal elites won the election with a different message that resonated. So for everybody that's hurting today, and there's people celebrating, there's people spiking the football. I was up early today. I'm getting texts from Republicans. I'm getting texts from Democrats, talking at the whole day. I get it. You want to spike some of these people, some of you guys on X as well, especially the anonymous people. How about you get some guts and put your face and name on the profile? You want to send me messages like, you know who you are. There's a cohort of maybe 100 to 200 of you out there that, you got the fake name and the fake profile, and you think, but you're consistent. It's not a burner account, or maybe it is, but you use it all the time. How about you actually come to the table and debate? You don't want to. You want to drop, you want to spike the football and the whole thing. That's your position. That's your approach. You've decided that that's your path to victory, and maybe you're right. But for everybody else out there, it's easy to say, oh, we'll get through this. We may not. The only way that people get through this is by taking care of themselves and taking care of their communities. You're going to get a Supreme Court with 40-year-old, probably with the Senate control as it is. You're going to see a rightward movement of the courts. You're going to see environmental protections rolled back. You're going to see a realignment. And you know what? Some of it may be good. I'm certainly not a champion of the pharmaceutical industry. I'm certainly not a champion of the agricultural industry. I'm certainly not a champion of even some of the aspects of the green economy that have been introduced at a corporate level. So maybe there's something you can look at and say, all right, well, we can work with that. Maybe there's an upside. But by and large, no, there isn't. There is not. So accepting it and realizing, how does this message get louder, or maybe not even be about volume? Volume in terms of audio level, and volume in terms of breadth and reach. It may be about, as I said, why did it connect in such a much more profound way when it doesn't make sense? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It does not add up. Not the vote. No doubt Trump won this thing. It doesn't add up that so many people who are hurting, who are feeling disconnected, in a bifurcation of society that ought not be left-right, but ought be up-down. It ought be viewed in haves and have-nots. Who's got the boot on the chin and who is wearing the boot? That's the fault line. But it was barely discussed. It barely impacted the final result. Now, do I think that overnight dissidents, protesters, those who are liberation-oriented, those who are climate resiliency-oriented, those who are women's rights-oriented, those who are trans rights-oriented, those who are true freedom of expression-oriented, those who are of a mindset that differs from the cohort's mindset, the new leadership of this country. Do I think that skulls will be cracked as a result of that? I don't. At least not right away. But I do think that we enter into a moment where art, journalism, science, the mystical, the magical are facing a huge challenge. It's not as simple as misinformation versus information. It's about something we can't put our fingers on. Connecting. So I say we start with each other. And I don't mean, put on the Sesame Street theme song and everybody run down the street hand in hand. I mean, hey, what do you need? How can I be of service? Anarcho-syndicalism practiced in Franco Spain began to see fruit born, not because of a leftist agenda, but because of down-to-earth connected mutual aid. At the community level, that's exactly what we need. And by the way, if you voted Trump and you believe in everything that Trump said, we also need to sit here and acknowledge that you ought not be written off as a fool. Because you know what? Number one, the machine got to you, and it was very, very effective. Number two, and this is why I give Patricia Morgan credit, the Senate candidate who challenged Sheldon Whitehouse and actually did get past 40% here in Rhode Island. Let me see what she did. 40.2%. Sheldon, 59.5%. Because she came in here for 90 minutes, and although I could barely get a word out, at least brought her ideas to the table, oftentimes as outrageously inaccurate as they were, and at times reasonable, and a platform for conversation and debate. There is a social compact still amongst all living things, carrots, elephants, and human beings alike. Mutual survival. We have to look at the broader conversation here and not just assume that day one, the agenda of the Trump cohort is the annihilation of the human species and the planet, even if the policies they're proposing do appear to be that way. They'll make the same argument back at Democrats. Well, you just want to start World War III. You got genocides. You got covert operations here and there. You got all kinds of nonsense happening with the militarization of outer space and the militarization of the sea, the agro-industrial leasing of the ocean. You're doing the same thing. Maybe they're right. But what is definitely right is this moment is not going to be resolved by, Americans are. This talk of civil war that you hear, would you please? It's nonsense. It's something much more difficult. And I hope we get there together. I believe we can. And that's not kumbaya. That's practical. It starts with yourself. I got to work on this. Starts with your community. Couple of things on the locals. No surprises. Question 1, the Constitutional Convention resoundingly rejected. All the other major bonds, all the 5 statewide approved. Megan Cotter, who I endorsed, wins in District 39. She is a Democrat who won. And by the way, you want to talk about an example of where Democrats got it wrong but also got it right. Megan Cotter winning in the red district against Justin Price, who was at January 6th, retaining her seat with a Democratic message that connected with people at the town square level, knocking on doors in a red district. Megan Cotter won. Why? Because she connected with people. Period. No other surprises locally. I was at the Democratic event last night. Good speeches. Good to see everybody. Everyone, the optimism was there. I said, geez, I left at about 9 o'clock, came back. I had my own war room here at the studio. watching the returns, texting with some people, pretty clear what was going to happen. Now I've got a guy with a leaf blower outside of my house. How about that? Outside of the studio. So that seems like a good time to sign off. But, hey, statewide, community-wide, and individual-wide. And regroup. Democrats need to regroup completely. Enough of this. Move on, please. Can we get a real working class party for the people, by the people? That's what it's going to take to win, because Trumpism is a faux version of that, and it seemed more authentic than Democrats, who are supposed to be the real version of that. Take care of each other, everybody. We got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do here in Rhode Island. Local issues. I got a lot on my plate. So many issues here in Providence, Atlantic Mills, the downtown skate park. Yeah, they do matter. We got a lot of work to do. We are very, very busy. And it's not just the parking conversation, by the way. Downtown Providence parking. That's the least of our concerns right now. We got a lot of work to do. We got a ton of work to do. Right here in Providence, right here in our state. Got to focus on it. That's what in 2016 after Trump won, I wasn't a podcaster. I wasn't any of this. And I said, what am I going to do? And I couldn't believe that nobody in Rhode Island started a local podcast. None of the TV stations, radio stations, newspapers. I was like, are you nuts? So we started it. And that was my initial entry point into this. And I'm going to use this moment as an entry point into more. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means specifically. I don't know if it means more media. I don't know what it means artistically. I don't know what it means in terms of running for office. But we all can lead by example. And I'm inspired by so many of you. I'm inspired every single day by you. That sounds so cheesy, but I really am. I see some of you guys who are doing the real work, and with our own house communities, with our kids at the education level, at the healthcare level, at the artistic level, even at the governmental level, at the policy level, people in office. I'm like, wow, I want to be you when I grow up. You know? I really do. That's who I'm looking at. I'm not looking at Dana White or Elon Musk. No way. I'm looking at Megan Carter. Okay? I'm looking at AS220. I'm looking at Dr. Amy Nunn. I'm looking at Jocelyn Foy, Women's Project. Looking at Jim Hummel. I'm looking at, the list is too long. I'm looking at my friends who are teachers. You guys are my heroes. I'm looking at the artist community. The real check and balance, right? I'm looking at this guy with this leaf blower, too. That's my cue. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.